As a boomer, I came up through this period after World War II, where I was never required to go and fight in a war. There was this possibility of world peace always hanging around, at least until the last 20 years. There was really that feeling through the last few decades of the 20th century that we might be able to navigate our way through. And then suddenly things fell apart again. They were already falling apart, but that's what we saw. On the other hand, people throughout history have been used to an extraordinary level, maybe not of warfare, depending where you were, but warfare was a very common fact of life in most places. Disease, plagues were an enormous thing. They were expected. You know, when you look at the average lifespan of people, it was so low because you could easily be knocked out by some terrible disease in your 40s, whereas these days you'd rush to a hospital and they'd say, well, we can shoot you full of some drugs and this should get you through. So we have this comparison in our minds between what was promised, and even if you weren't really conscious in the late 20th century, like the boomers and the Gen X people, you're still hearing us tell you the story of how wonderful, in quotes, it was before. So you have this sense of loss and lack of direction. And we don't really have that sense of identification with the historic reality, which was, if war doesn't come this year, then we can have a good harvest. But often war was part of the political processes that people had to live under. So we're in this funny time when we don't quite know what our time is supposed to be like, but it feels like it's not being what we wish that it was.
Yeah, it feels like that. I mean, I was a teenager in the 90s, and that was comparable in the sense that there was just this feeling of being insulated. And especially living in southern Ontario, it's just kind of like sheltered from the whatever might be going wrong in the world outside. It just felt like, okay, there were wars in the past, as you say, and like now things are cool. There's the chance of peace. And it felt like, okay, well, that's all in the past, that kind of thing. And then 9/11 was the big, kick in the pants for that sent shockwaves.
Yes.
And kind of destroyed that apparent peace and, the sense that we were safe and sheltered and that sort of thing.
Yes, that was the big thing that broke out 9/11 and everything that spilled out from that, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, the sense of a broken world order. I think there were a lot of historical factors already in place that made it far worse. The unwisdom of the political leaders we've had in the Western countries anyway is quite stunning. Maybe this is part of the falling away and the falling apart that we have to go through. I don't think it's fatalism to say that this is unavoidable. I think it's just we are, the river is washing away the marks, the street signs. And that is a necessary but upsetting, scary change in history. We're moving into an entirely new kind of history. What's it going to be like? Will we have countries in the old way? Because the entire global political order is up in the air right now, and nobody's doing really well. China's in lots of economic problems. The States is divided. Russia got itself in a slight mess in Eastern Europe, and so on and so on. There is no shining beacon on the hill here. You only find the beacon within yourself when you have actually decided to make that commitment to seek a dynamic truth within yourself.
I think I'm sort of sensing some people catching on to the fact that, like, if you can focus at the local level rather than getting too caught up at the global level, there are changes you can make. There are differences that you can make.
Definitely. And again, I'd say you have to start with the personal. Thelema does not see this as mere selfishness. This is commitment to the divine spark that is our lives. You're not going to find that divine spark by being focused on everything but your own existential fact. I'm here in this time. I have power within me. But I need to learn to nurture that. I need to learn to discover it. I need to learn to express it in the ways that I can do effectively. Yeah, maybe Greta Thunberg had some effect on the public debate. I don't know, but a lot more needs to be done by people on the local levels and saying, look, this particular situation needs to be fixed. And you can do that far more effectively when you have the confidence of a sense that you are right with yourself, that you know that there is something more than merely human operating within you.
Darkly Splendid Abodes. Released at midnight on the first and third Fridays each month. And available on Spotify and various other streaming services.